Gilgo Beach Serial Killings, all you need to know. In December 2010, a police officer and his dog were out on the desolate shores of Gilgo Beach on Long Island, New York. They were searching for 24-year-old Shanann Gilbert, who had been declared missing. Hours later, they stumbled on a body wrapped in burlap. But no, it wasn't Shanann's. Days later, the police uncovered the bodies of young women buried 500 feet apart. Suffolk police dubbed it the Long Island serial killer case. The question on everyone's mind is this: did one person kill the victims? What connects them? How many victims were buried there? This video unwraps the tiniest detail in the Long Island serial killer case. It explores the victims, suspects, evidence, and the trial. Brace yourself for this long ride. First victim, Maureen Brainard-Barnes. The Gilgo Beach serial killings began in 2007 with Maureen Brainard-Barnes. She was only 25 when she vanished into thin air. Before then, she was planning a trip to New York City. Brainard-Barnes was last seen on July 9, 2007. She told a friend she was meeting with a client outside a motel that night. The mother of two worked as a sex worker for some years. However, she left the business for a few months. She only returned to pay her bills after an eviction notice. She was desperate for extra cash. Shortly after her disappearance, Sarah Corrins, her friend, received a call from a strange number. The caller alleged that her friend was alive but hiding in a whorehouse in Queens. At the time, the victim was already declared missing. The unknown voice did not identify himself or his location. However, he promised to get back to Sarah with more details. That was the last time she heard from him. Sarah told the police that the caller had a Maine, Boston, or New York accent. Brainard-Barnes was 4 feet 11 inches tall and weighed around 105 pounds. Melissa Barthelemy. Next on the list was Melissa Barthelemy, a 24-year-old woman from Erie County, New York. She lived in the Bronx in New York and worked as a sex worker on Craigslist. On the night of July 12, 2009, she met with a client who paid part of her fees to her account. She wanted to go with her boyfriend because she didn't trust this man. Unfortunately, his number didn't go through, so she went alone. When she didn't return the following day, her friends were worried. 1 week later, her underage sister Amanda received a series of mocking calls from a man with Melissa's phone. He taunted her and asked silly questions. He said several hurtful things that worried her about her sister. Eventually, he broke the horrible news. Melissa is dead, and he would watch her rot. Police immediately swung into action. They traced the call to Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, and Massapequa but could not locate the caller. Melissa's mother also received similar calls from the suspected killer. She was frightened and hoped it was a prank. The police did not close in on the suspect immediately. But then, one man came to mind. John Bitrolf was a carpenter already convicted of 2 murders. He was eventually acquitted of her disappearance. Megan Waterman. 1 year after Melissa disappeared, Megan Waterman followed suit. She was 22 years old when she disappeared on June 6, 2010. Her family told the police she was last seen boarding a Concord Trailways bus from Maine to New York. At 1:30 a.m. on June 6, she left the Holiday Inn Express on Long Island to meet a client. When she didn't return home 2 days later, her family alerted the police. It was unusual for her not to check on her only daughter. Unfortunately, her body was found on December 13, 2010, near Gilgo Beach. A team of private investigators helped search for her. Waterman left a crucial piece of evidence that would later prove useful. She once boasted to her mother that her clients included reputable doctors, lawyers, and law enforcement officers. Amber Lynn Costello. Amber Lynn Costello is the 4th victim in the Gilgo Beach murders. Costello hailed from Western Babylon, New York. The small town was 10 miles north of Gilgo Beach. She was a sex worker and a heroin user. She had been addicted since she was a teenager. Her life was tough. On the night of September 2, 2010, she met a stranger who offered her a whopping $1,500 for her services. Witnesses say the client visited her home the previous day. They described him as a large white male with big oval-style glasses. They added that he drove a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. Her parents believed their daughter was in a drug rehabilitation center, so her disappearance was not immediately reported. Her family suspected foul play when she stopped taking her calls and replying to text messages. Costello's remains were discovered on December 13, 2010. Aside from these 4 victims, 4 other remains were discovered on March 29 and April 4, 2011. All 4 victims were found in an area off the parkway near Oak Beach and Gilgo Beach. The remains belong to Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, Jane Doe, and an unidentified toddler believed to be Jane's daughter. Days later, the police expanded their search to Nassau County. The result of this search was more gruesome than expected. They discovered 2 other remains on April 11, 2011. How were the missing bodies uncovered? The peaceful community of Gilgo Beach on Long Island changed forever with one chilling 911 call. On May 10, 2010, Sharnan Gilbert called the police with a shaky voice. "Something is going to happen to me, there's somebody after me, please," she said. The chaotic call ended abruptly. She disappeared into the marshes right after the call. Police intensified efforts to find her, but would give up early in the investigation. Well, Marie Gilbert did not let that happen. In the final days of her life, she pressured the police to take her daughter's disappearance seriously. She fought tirelessly so that Sharnan and the other victims would not be forgotten. The search set into motion, this time, more aggressively. The result uncovered a mystery that terrorized Long Island for over a decade. On December 11, 2010, a Suffolk County cop and a cadaver dog were scouring the dense shrub area along the Ocean Parkway at Gilgo Beach. Suddenly, the dog reached for a woman's remains. The body was not Sharnan's. Instead, it was Melissa Barthelemy. 2 days later, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Maureen Brainard's bodies were found buried 1 mile apart from each other. Investigators named the women the Gilgo Four. Residents feared that a serial killer was on the loose. They wondered who the next victim was. Even more suspicious is the fact that all 4 women were Craigslist escorts and were killed similarly. They were wrapped in a burlap sack and buried in a shallow grave. 5 other bodies were discovered within the area. As for Gilbert, her body was buried 3 miles away from others. In the wake of these discoveries, investigators spent the next few years studying the details. They wondered if the same killer murdered the victims. Many accused the police of not doing enough because the victims were prostitutes. Earlier in the case, authorities suspected that the deaths were not linked, and their reason was obvious. Some of the victims' bodies were dismembered, and others intact. But no, some experts disagreed. In December 2011, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Richard Dormer announced that one serial killer was to blame. He argued that it was normal for serial killers to adjust their methods. That's what the killer, in this case, did, he claimed. Days later, the police announced that Gilbert's death was an unfortunate accident. They said she drowned in the marsh, where her body was found. However, the deaths of the Gilgo Four were deliberate. It was the work of one person who was on the loose. The Gilgo Four probe started in 2012. A series of back and forths followed this. It wasn't until 2020 that Geraldine Hart, the then Suffolk Commissioner, announced a new development in the case. The unit launched the Gilgo News website, which accepted anonymous tips. Investigators released several pictures, including a leather belt they believed belonged to the suspect. Letters HM and WH were etched on it. Officers believed the belt belonged to the suspect and not the victims. After Gilgo News, Commissioner Rodney Harrison formed an interagency task force to dive deeper into the case. He promised that the case would be solved and everyone responsible would be brought to the fore. It was at this point that detectives re-examined the evidence in the case. Behold, the police found the missing puzzle, one that took more than a decade to unravel. The suspect had been hiding in plain sight all these years. He seemed unbothered about the investigation. The suspects. John Bittrolff was the first suspect. He was a former carpenter born in New York on July 1, 1966. He was arrested in 2014 and charged with the murders of 31-year-old Rita Tangredi and Colleen McNamee. Both women were brutally beaten, strangled, and dumped in the woods. Police traced Bittrolff thanks to DNA evidence from his brother, Timothy Bittrolff. John Bittrolff was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive sentences of 25 years. He is serving his sentence at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. At first, former Suffolk County Attorney Tom Spoter dismissed the idea that John was the killer. He said there was no evidence linking him to the victims. But in 2017, Robert Biancavilla, former Suffolk County Assistant District Attorney, suggested there could be a link. Further investigation showed that Bittrolff wasn't the Long Island serial killer. And now to the big question, who is the infamous Long Island serial killer? Between March 2022 and June 2023, the suspect in the Gilgo Beach murders searched online for updates in the investigation. He was up to date with every bit of detail. He searched for more information about the victims and their families. He Googled the new phone technology in the case. Even more suspicious was his particular interest in the new task force. For over a decade, he went about his daily life unmoved by the noise around him. He owned an architectural firm in Manhattan and came home to his wife and children after work. He had a seemingly perfect life. When residents questioned why the police had not closed in on the suspect, he joined them. He acted like he cared. He went ahead to ask Google why the police had not traced the calls made by the Long Island serial killer. The suspect was looking over his shoulder. He feared he was under surveillance at some point, so he was more careful. On July 13, 2023, Rex Heuermann left his office in Midtown. He was walking along a busy Manhattan road when some men surrounded him. It was game over. His time was up. Rex Heuermann was a father of 2. The Long Island native was arrested and charged with 3 deaths: Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, and Amber Costello. He was named the prime suspect in Maureen Brainard-Barnes' murder. How the police closed in on the Long Island serial killer. Before the arrest, the police had a long list of clues. They received anonymous tips from the public and pieced them together. The first puzzle was when a witness in the Costello case came forward. The witness described the vehicle the victim's client was driving. The client visited Costello earlier that night, but a man posing as her boyfriend showed up and made him leave. This move was to trick the client out of cash. The witness said the client was driving a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche. The next day, the same client contacted Costello. He asked that she meet him in an unknown location. He didn't want to visit her home because of her boyfriend. Costello left her house and never returned. The vehicle's details came to light in January 2022 when the task force took a deeper look into the case. A registration search showed that Mr. Heuermann owned a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche when Costello disappeared. He also matched the witness's description of the suspect. Earlier, he said the man was in his mid-40s and around 6 feet 4 inches to 6 feet 6 inches tall with dark, bushy hair. This was the turning point in the investigation. At that moment, the police knew they had found the suspect. Once they traced the owner of the car, the investigations came alive. It led to search warrants and other legal processes that helped the police determine his involvement in the killings. The next clue was Rex Heuermann's stash of burner phones. When the women went missing, Rex was in touch with a man with a burner phone. He used the device to arrange meetings with the escorts. People use burner phones for illegal activities. They are often impossible or difficult to trace. Thankfully, Heuermann made some errors while using them. The phones he used to contact his victims pinged off the same cell towers as his legitimate cell phone. This means he had his cell phones while using the burner phones. Worse still, the burner phones pinged off in 2 critical locations. The first one beeped near Heuermann's office in Midtown Manhattan. The second location is even more distressing. It pinged off near his family home in Massapequa Park. It was certainly not a coincidence. Both locations correspond with the victim's disappearance. Investigators dug deeper to be sure. Unfortunately, they found no instance where Heuermann was in a separate place from the cell phones. In fact, days before Barthelemy's disappearance, he reached her through a burner phone. He called her multiple times. The last contact was on July 10, 2009, around the time she was last seen alive. Only one person had explanations for the coincidence. The killer didn't stop there. He took two of his victims' phones after their murders. It was a sick move that helped nail him. In one instance, he called her family to taunt them about what he had done. Prosecutors are confident that the man on the other end is Heuermann. Months after Barthelemy's death, he was still in touch with her family. During one of those heartbreaking calls, the male caller boasted about killing and sexually assaulting Barthelemy. The police traced the calls to his Midtown office, where his daughter works. He also used Brainard-Barnes' cell phone to check her voicemail. With these details sorted out, the police dug deeper into the suspect's online search. Even after the murders, Heuermann continued to use burner phones to reach sex workers. His behavior was predictable. Prosecutors say he had Tinder profiles and several email accounts under a series of fake names. These accounts were linked to his burner phones. He used the device to search for graphic images of children and young girls. He had a particular interest in torture-related pornography. His searches included a 10-year-old girl and girl hogtied torture porn. He also looked up images of murder victims and their relatives. He kept a close eye on the Long Island serial killer investigation. Knowing he kept a close eye on the case, the police monitored him closely. Just when the police thought they had closed in on Rex Heuermann, a stunning plot emerged from the blues. Detectives found hair belonging to Mr. Heuermann's wife on the bodies of 3 of the victims. The hair was found on the tape the killer used to wrap around Waterman's head. Another hair was seen on the tape used to wrap burlap around Costello. The third hair was seen in a belt buckle used to bind Brainard-Barnes. Investigators snooped around the trash in Heuermann's Long Island home to identify whose hair it was. In July 2022, they found 11 bottles in the trash. They immediately took it for forensic testing. The results were unbelievable. Forensic testing revealed that the DNA on the bottles matched the female hair on the crime scene. Even more concerning was that the hair belonged to the suspect's former wife. Investigators feared that she may have partnered with her husband to hurt the women. But no, that was not the case. Asa Ellerup was out of time when the murder happened. The police concluded that her hair was transferred to the crime scene through her husband's clothes or the tape. Heuermann's hair was also found on the burlap used to wrap Waterman's body. When the hair was first retrieved in 2010, it was unsuitable for DNA analysis. It was locked in a safe place. 10 years later, it was submitted for analysis. Investigators wanted to confirm that it matched the suspect's own. They needed his DNA to compare the samples. Because it was a discreet investigation, they would not arrest him yet. Instead, they set up a surveillance team around his home and office. One fateful day, they watched him toss a pizza box into a trash can. The team collected and analyzed the leftover pizza crust in a forensic lab. The result was out days later. It showed 99.96% accuracy. They confirmed that the hair found near the burlap was his. It was stuck there while he transported Megan Waterman's naked body. With all the evidence pointing to one man, the police arrested the suspect on July 13, 2023. It happened after the afternoon rush. As the sun set over Midtown, Rex Heuermann strolled by New Yorkers on Fifth Avenue. He strapped his work bag over his left shoulder. He was unaware that detectives were following him. The detectives followed him from a distance. Before he realized it, he was surrounded and arrested around 8:30 p.m. that day. The decade-long mystery that lingered for over a decade was gradually coming to a close. Rex Heuermann is charged with 3 first- and second-degree murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. Trial. Rex Heuermann made his first court appearance on August 1, 2023. The hearing had everyone glued to the internet for the latest in the case. The suspect wore a suit coat and khaki pants. He rocked back and forth on his heels as his attorney and prosecutor discussed discovery. Prosecutors turned over hard drives to the defense, including 2,500 pages of photographs and documents. The documents include autopsy reports, DNA reports, and surveillance footage from Heuermann's home. Details of the paper are still sketchy, but they are believed to contain incriminating evidence taken during searches of his home, office, car, and Suffolk crime lab. Meanwhile, Heuermann's attorney, Michael Brown, told journalists he hadn't received any documents. More importantly, his client has not agreed to a plea deal. He is confident that he did not commit the crimes. Therefore, the trial will continue. Brown insisted that Heuermann's team would defend his case in court. As for the hard drives, he will take them to his office and carefully review them. Police are also expanding their search outside of Long Island. They are searching other parts of the country where the suspect may have ties. Las Vegas, South Carolina, and Atlantic City are under the radar. In Las Vegas, Heuermann purchased 2 timeshares in the city in 2003 and 2005. He sold the first, but kept the second. Authorities are revisiting unsolved cases for any sign that the suspected Gilgo Beach serial killer may be involved. He also owns a property in a wooded area in South Carolina's Chester County. He planned to retire there. Although he purchased the property in 2021, his brother lived in the Chester area since 2000. Investigators are looking into a possible connection between the suspect and a missing South Carolina woman. Julia Ann Bin vanished on May 31, 2017. She was last seen in the Red Bay Road area of Sumter. 6 years later, an anonymous woman believed to be her friend contacted the Sumter County Sheriff's Office. She told investigators that she thought there may be a connection between Julia and the murder suspect. As for Atlantic City, 4 female victims found in 2006 were found dead near the Bay Drive motel. The suspect could also be charged with the possession of illegal weapons. During a 12-day-long search at his house, police found a cache of over 200 guns inside his vault. Investigators say only 92 firearms were legally registered. Having several weapons is suspicious and raises concerns about his involvement in the Gilgo 4. Investigators are exploring whether Heuermann killed any of his victims inside his house. This information is still sketchy. However, prosecutors confirmed that his wife and children were not at home at the time of the killings. Heuermann appeared in court for his second hearing on September 27. His attorney denied that his client is a monster, as portrayed by the media. Barthelemy and Brainard-Barnes sisters were among the relatives at the second hearing. Prosecutors established that the male hair recovered from the burlap used to wrap Waterman's body matched the DNA on the leftover pizza crust. The suspect told the judge that he is allowed to view court documents for up to 4 hours a day. He studies the materials for up to 3 hours daily. As the news of the Long Island serial killer went viral, his wife, Asa Ellerup, filed for a divorce. The couple have been married for over 2 decades and share a daughter and a stepson. She told the court that her life was negatively affected by her husband's alleged actions. She was not at his first hearing, but showed up in court for months later. She wore a slight smile and looked at her husband in the face. It is unclear if he saw her, but his facial expression showed he appreciated her presence. His attorney, Michael Brown, noted that Ellerup does not believe that her husband is capable of those acts. Well, only the court can decide that. Ellerup later left the courtroom silently. She declined to speak to the crowd of reporters flocking around her car. Her attorney, Robert Macedonio, confirmed that she was at the trial to see if he was guilty of the crimes. She wants to confirm the allegation since the media and podcast people have put it out. Ellerup and her children have been at the receiving end of the Gilgo Beach murder case. She told reporters that her children cry themselves to sleep each day. They stood outside as the police ransacked their home. Pictures and personal effects were thrown all over the place. The couch was shredded, and nothing made sense. She had to prepare a corner of the house to sleep hurriedly. Investigators also unearthed part of the backyard while digging for evidence. Heuermann's daughter, Victoria, said the police treated her family like animals. The family's lawyer confirmed this. Bob Macedonio said the family is enduring a profound and indescribably catastrophe. Rex Heuermann's next court hearing is slated for February 6, 2024. Prosecutors are hopeful that they've found enough evidence to indict him. His defense is not backing down, either. They maintain their client is innocent. What do you think? Is Rex Heuermann the brain behind the Long Island serial killings? Share your theories in the comments below. If you're fascinated by crime stories like this one, smash the like and subscribe button for more. Until the next one, stay safe.